What is up, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be going over Origin Trail, but better than just me talking about it, I am going to be talking with the co-founders, Tomas and Giga, and then also advisor John Keogh, who's now the chairman of the Trace Alliance, and we're going to go over Origin Trail. But extra exciting stuff in this episode. Guys, if you want to win some Origin Trail swag, comment down on this video the top three best comments, ones that say like Origin Trail is awesome or something like that. I don't know. They're going to win a sweatshirt and 2 t-shirts. And then if you follow Origin Trail on Twitter, just because I don't tweet that much, but if you look at them on Twitter and you retweet their post about this episode, boom, 3 more shirts. Ways to win Origin Trail swag. So make sure you do that stuff. Watch the video. Hope you enjoy. I'll see you at the end, I guess. Peace. Boom shakalaka, what's going on, everybody? Randall here from Crypto Love, and I am joined today by Tomas and Giga from Origin Trail. What's going on, guys?
Hey man, thanks for having us. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful day here in Urbana, yeah, so we're just enjoying.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you guys. It's actually a little bit of surprise for me. I was planning on interviewing John Keogh, who we'll be speaking with later, but I get the special privilege of talking with both of you first. So to begin with, why don't you just let everybody know a little bit about yourselves?
Sure, you can start. There you go.
Yeah, we're 2/3 of what is kind of a 3 members of the founding group of the Origin Trail protocol, which is the protocol that enables seamless data exchange in supply chains so that businesses can speak the same language, and of course with integrity as it is based on blockchain. And why we are jumping in right now, we just wanted to provide some kind of a social proof that we're having John Keogh right now with us. And he's been with us for a while now, for more than half a year. It was back in the days, if we are counting in crypto time units, when it was actually before the ICO. When we were looking for advisors that have kind of the same DNA match as we do. And since our protocol is also very much connected to the standards, GS1 standards, we were looking for experts that know a lot about this area. So after completing I think the second iteration of the white paper, or even the first one, we stumbled upon that guy on, I think it was on LinkedIn, and he was writing a lot about blockchain and GS1 standards and how we can improve situation in supply chains by implementing both. We decided to write an email to him, and we sent him the deck and also a white paper. And immediately after this kind of first interaction, we clicked. I think he wrote something along these lines. You guys really get it. You guys are using GS1 standards, and as someone who used to work for GS1 Global Office, I think that was also a good match for him, as he will explain later on. And then, of course, we did not only meet online. It was not only an online dating stuff. We actually, since we were very much present in Asia, even before we conducted an ICO, we got connected with several partners in China. And it was great to be a part of 2 conferences, actually, in Beijing. Food Safety Conference, where also John was one of the speakers. And it was interesting, when we entered the room, there was John, actually presenting one of our showcases with the dairy here from Europe. That was actually the first company that started using Origin Trail solutions back in 2014. So it was also a great honor to meet him, in physical form back then. And so after he was onboarded as an advisor, he was not with us only as a face value. I mean, he's apparently a very handsome guy. He's a very charming guy, as you will see. What was even more important is that he acts as if he was part of the team, and of course we kind of embraced him as a team member. And from this time on, we decided to kind of give him more tools to contribute to the OriginTrail ecosystem and to the Trace Alliance. Now, without going too much into detail, Tomasz, I'm sorry for taking too much time. Do you have anything to add?
I agree with everything you said. No, I think it's a nice genesis. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let you ask your question.
All right. Perfect. So I haven't yet done a review of OriginTrail on the channel. So for everyone who's new to OriginTrail, I have gotten a lot of requests for OriginTrail on the channel, so I don't think a lot of people are new, but for the new people, can you tell them a bit about OriginTrail and also why perhaps blockchain is a good solution for OriginTrail?
Yeah, sure. So we've been working in the supply chain space for a couple of years before. So the first touch we had with supply chains was back in 2011, and then in 2013 we kind of started working on it more in a more structured way. And data integrity was at all times something that was a repeating question that we got, kind of because we were at the end of the day brokering those data sets once we were trying to establish visibility in supply chains. So that tilted us towards blockchain, and we started looking at it from that perspective. How can we provide integrity to the data sets in our system? What really got us excited was the decentralization part, because that was answering another question that was very a burning one, which is how to create more incentives for companies to A, start collecting more data, but B, create a better way to incentivize and to have a more neutral way of sharing this data between the entire supply chain, so you could have a more end-to-end visibility. That was at the end of 2016, 2017 when we started working with Ethereum and putting hashes of the data that we receive onto the chain. Beyond that, it was difficult to do something. So OriginTrail, as a protocol that it is today, really came as a response to kind of our challenges that we had and the challenges of the industry that we saw. And without going into more kind of groundwork, OriginTrail is a middleware protocol that sits on top of blockchain, but below the application layer. It's completely decentralized graph database that answers three challenges that we saw are the most crucial within the supply chain blockchain intersection. So it's really how to solve data interoperability, how to connect different data silos along the supply chain, how to bring more scalability to the entire how to bring decentralized scalability also to data. So not just the transactions, but how to really do more things. And we were able to do that by making it really, really purpose-built for supply chain use case. And then the third one was how to do with the protection of data. Which is a big question that the companies have. So we have a couple of different layers of data protection, from public to encrypted to zero knowledge proof, which we just released in the latest or the release before the last one. The first version is out. So those are kind of the things that the protocol is doing. Not a lot of things, but it does a couple of things really well.
That's really interesting that you mentioned those three areas for supply chain, because those are the three areas in cryptocurrencies where most people are working on this year: interoperability, scalability, and then also security. So that's very interesting that it fits in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we go in similar directions, and I think it's because we're still kind of early. This is still very much foundational technology. And it's the excitement we're getting from the industry is what really drives us, and what was the reason behind setting up this Trace Alliance ecosystem as well, is how to bring out different stakeholders that are interested in using the technology and have them have this collaborative way of working together. Because supply chains in crypto, a lot of people are thinking in a very narrow sense, and they see it as a niche. It's 2/3 of the entire GDP of the world. So it's everything around you. It comes from the photos or the paintings that you have behind you. It's the computers we use. It's clothing we have. It's the food we eat. It surrounds the entirety of you, and it's a very complex problems to tackle. So you always need to have a collaborative approach if you want to do that. And neutrality of blockchain or decentralized solution is what's necessary to jumpstart this collaboration. And so this is kind of the angle that we're taking, and all those three challenges are pertaining to our system as well as kind of others that are trying to do that.
Perfect. And also the blockchain adds trust and immutability to the information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the you can think of it as the starting point of so many different things, because it provides a single layer or a layer of a single truth, because you're able to kind of create these cross checks between claims of different actors, really aligning responsibility with accountability, and you get this one layer of truth. And now I'm really getting into deep. You tricked me into it, man. You get me excited. I'll talk all day. But yeah, it's, I think we brought it nicely to the entire collaborative aspect to it, and kind of bringing a lot of companies together, which is where, again, John was very instrumental to these efforts. One of the maybe, and we can kind of cut it off at this point, at least from my side, is the one of the greatest thing about decentralization and bringing up this neutrality to the protocol is it enables you to connect with so many great people. John being, a prime example of that, is that you can bring people to a project which is open source, which is neutral, which is collaborative, and allow them to be a positive actor in that ecosystem, and connect different particles that they maybe know that can be useful for others. And this is the point that we're trying to make with the Trace Alliance, and this is the point that John has been actively kind of following throughout from the beginning of our cooperation until today. And yeah, so it's a pleasure to have him on board and to be part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, and without further ado, let's make some space, as John is going to also talk more about the use cases.
And of course, as well, at the time of airing, of course, you guys already know, John is also officially been given the title or the position of a chairman of the Trace Alliance. So we're really looking forward to kind of having him at that position as well, and driving all the things forward. So John, we're going to give you some space. And thank you very much for having us as an intro, and enjoy the talk.
Yay.
What an act to follow, holy smokes.
Hello, Chairman. Yeah, Chairman John Keogh. Welcome.
That's me, the chairman.
Welcome. So I was first going to introduce you before I knew about the chairman. I was going to introduce you as the Supply Chain Integrity and Standards Advisor.
And I got a new title now today.
Perfect. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, John, welcome. And to begin with, you have quite an illustrious history behind you, and at least from my perspective, seems very well suited for OriginTrail. So can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
My background? Well, let me start with, I was born in Ireland. So some people pick up on the accent that I was born in Ireland, but I lived in Holland for 10 years and have been speaking double Dutch for about 30 years. So also, I think I'm probably, more like a Dutchman, being very direct and very open and honest. But I spent 20 years in Canada, so I softened that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And now I've been living in Vietnam for the last 5 years. So my accent is probably middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That's probably the best way to describe it. From a professional perspective, I've done, I think, 4 major roles: building high-performance supply chains across Europe, also leading global supply chains in North America that had global context, leading global IT operations in manufacturing, and also a senior VP role in global standards, where you get to interact across 22 different industry sectors, and also heading up consulting and integration at Hewlett-Packard in Canada. So I think with all of those major hats, it's very, very easy for me now to act as an advisor to organizations. Not a consultant, but an advisor. And you know the difference, right?
I don't. Could you enlighten me?
Well, let me put in the disclaimer first. For all you consultants out there, I do apologize for saying this, but this is how I have to explain it. A consultant will tell you what you want to hear for as long as you want to hear it. But an advisor will tell you what you need to hear when you need to hear it. And that's the part that excited me about advising OriginTrail, because these guys get it. I told them up front, that's how I operate. And I said, if you're up to that, if you're okay with that, that's what you'll get. So no beating around the bush. So I put these guys under pressure quite often. Where's this? Where's that? Did you do this? Did you do that? So it's not a figurehead. It's not just a name, John G. Keogh, on the website. It's more than that. Believe me, I'm putting them under little bit of pressure and a little bit of scrutiny every now and again. And one of the things I said at the start, promise me you will not hype anything. And they said, we don't believe in the hype. So I love it. The independence, the neutrality fits perfectly with my DNA, which is what Giga said earlier as well. So we had a good DNA fit right from the start. The independence, the neutrality, perfect solution. They can work with all of the solution providers out there. And hopefully the Trace Alliance program will also kick in and we'll get everyone around the table to do a lot of really, really good things.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sounds like a great match. So we've been mentioning the Trace Alliance a little bit. Can you go more into detail with what that is and what it's going to do?
Yeah, we're in the strategic planning phase for it right now, but now I have the role of chairman. I guess I have to talk a little bit about what that is and how it will take shape and form. But I think the best way to see the Trace Alliance program is a forum. We're going to bring people together. Now, who are we going to bring together around the table? We want governments around the table. We want NGOs around the table. We want brand owners. We want retailers. We want solution providers around the table as well. And not to forget, we need the academics as well. And I'm also 50% of my time as a doctoral researcher in transparency and trust. So we need all of those people around the table together to look at what is this protocol and how can we drive more awareness of the protocol and push it out there into the marketplace. If we're successful with this, it's very much like TCP/IP was to the internet. If we can get this protocol out and deployed widely, it will help the overall deployments of blockchains around the world. So it's very exciting, and we're looking to have our first conference. I don't know if I'm permitted to say this, but I think am I okay to say October timeframe, mid-October? And the rumor is it's on my birthday on the 12th of October. We're going to have a conference. We haven't figured out really the name. Is symposium, a conference, but it's going to be here in Ljubljana in Slovenia, and we're going to invite some really, really exciting speakers. We're going to be focused on use cases. There's going to be train-the-trainer sessions. There's going to be some partners coming in here as well, some tier 1 partners as part of the Trace Alliance program, and we're going to get everything moving forward.
Wonderful. That sounds good. So I want to ask you a little bit more about why OriginTrail is a good supply chain solution. So as you mentioned before, like 2/3 of the GDP is based in supply chain. So that's a huge market out there. And it seems like things kind of line up, but also in supply chain, there's a few other competing cryptocurrencies out there like Modem, Wabi, VeChain, Walton Chain. So can you talk a little bit about how OriginTrail is planning to take this on?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the solutions that you mentioned, they can actually work with the OriginTrail protocol. There's no problem there. So from a competitor perspective, there's not allowed out there because it provides that middleware layer. So within that context, it can actually help link blockchain to blockchain and also blockchain into legacy apps. So several of the players out there would probably welcome sitting down with OriginTrail for that critical missing link, which is in the middle. Now, if we look back at the challenges we had at the GS1 organization, now GS1 is the global standards body. It's driven by industry. So their board of directors is the who's who in food and CPG companies. And you have the likes of Amazon, Google, and so on, eBay. They're all, and even Alibaba, these guys are all members of GS1. So this is pretty serious and significant stuff. So they're not going away at any time soon. So adopting the GS1 standards is the #1 key to success. So the question that I would have for other companies that are out there in the supply chain space, if they're not using GS1 standards, they will not get adoption. It's absolutely zero chance. The GS1 standards, if you look at this, this is one of the use cases here, by the way. This is, what do you call them? Barry the Bear. So in one of the alliance partners with everything, they use GS1 standards and IoT and the barcode here to be able to trace this little fella. And the barcode that's on here from GS1, it has been around since April the 3rd, 1973. April 3rd, 1973, when US industry decided to go with GS1. And a strange little fact, now this may come up in a pub quiz, but the first cell phone call was also April the 3rd, 1973. So what has happened, these two creations or inventions have gone off on their journeys, for 35 to 40 years, and now they're coming together. Two globally trusted platforms, the GS1 system plus the cell phone, to give us access to data like we've never had before. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is really nice that they're both coming together. Tomas and Giga spoke about how much they appreciated you being in the space. So what really drew you to OriginTrail as opposed to other things out there?
Well, number one, I have a daughter older than these two guys. So first off, they weren't looking for a father figure. They were looking for someone who could match their ideas. First, when I came in and when I started talking to these guys, they were more mature than I expected. And one of the key things for me that attracted me is they were already in business for 3 or 4 years at that time. And what they have actually developed with OriginTrail is based on real experience. These guys have, you fail fast in what they've done previously, and they've built up their experience based on those projects that they've done prior to developing OriginTrail. So for me, the number one thing is that they're very smart guys, very intuitive, ready to go. They're a good team and cohesive, and they had been together for nearly 4 years at that point when I met them. So plus the DNA was very close, independent, neutral, and wanting to solve a big, big, hairy problem, a BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal of getting that out there. And that is a beautiful thing. And I've turned down many advisory roles in the past because I didn't like going down a particular path, selling one particular software or solution or aligning myself with one. This way I feel comfortable. I like the integrity of the team. This is my first time visiting them here in Slovenia, but all my dealings with them so far has just been absolutely incredible. They're, talk about easy to do business with. Even when I'm putting them under pressure to get stuff done as an advisor, they're responding very fantastically, and they're a very, very mature team. So net, they had been there, they had done that, and what they've done with OriginTrail is based on experience, and they're not a startup. So these are the things that were very important for me at the start.
Great. Now, OriginTrail, they've been around for a while before they really implemented blockchain, but with the protocol, I'm not sure if you would be able to know the answer to this, but where do you kind of see yourselves in terms of development? Are you at the very beginning? Are you kind of in the middle? Are you closer towards full prototype?
Yeah, I think the Maya will start producing some of that in the next couple of weeks, but there was just every couple of weeks, there's a new release of the testnet. Mm-hmm. And now what's happening is that testnet is feeding into the Trace Alliance program, where we're getting the partners to go in and play around in this testnet. And there are several use cases already using the testnet to beef it up and proof it out and so on and so forth. And we got some exciting news to come down the pipeline very, very soon with some major systems integrators that are also going to start playing in there very, very soon. So we're excited about that, and they have a very, very structured process to start releasing new releases every couple of weeks. I think it's every couple of weeks. Yeah.
So anything else that I didn't really touch on that we wanted to talk about in terms of like Trust Alliance or your role in the company, anything like that?
Well, another thing that attracted me to the guys, I don't know if you can see it here in the background, and I think this is very good. When I was in Beijing and when I met the guys, they won this award and they invited me to go to this. So, I mean, I'm good buddies with the VP of Food Safety at Walmart, Frank Yanis, but they got this award from Walmart. And this award was for innovation in food safety. So we hear a lot about Walmart and doing some fantastic stuff, and they are, it's incredible. But to be able to get this award for innovation in China with Yamashiji, the partner, I mean, that was just fantastic stuff. So the use cases are coming fast and furious, and now we got to look at how do we deploy it. And I think one of the most exciting projects that I'm personally involved in is in Vietnam. So we thought, how can we go beyond some of the projects that are out there, the ones that are just doing recall in just a couple of seconds? We thought, what if we could do a recall in a couple of seconds, but also do the recall and find out which laboratory did the actual scientific testing and which one verified that that food was actually safe. So what we've actually done, we've coupled 2 laboratories together, one in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh, depending on whether you're from the north or from the south. We have Guangwu laboratories in Saigon, And that's where I live, by the way. As a vegan, it's probably one of the best places in the world to have vegan food in Saigon. Just it may come up in a quiz sometime, you never know. And we have Source Certain in Perth, Australia, fantastic deep technical scientists. But interestingly enough here, between the two laboratories, they have more technology than most countries. So it's absolutely incredible to do authentication and also provenance, or what we call origin of food and non-food as well. So what we're actually doing is we're implementing the GS1 standards into the laboratories, both laboratories, starting off with the one in Saigon. So what does that really mean? It means that when the producer has produced a batch of goods, we're going to take a sample from the batch. And typically you would have 3 samples coming out, one to the buyer, one to the seller, and one to the lab. And they're going to get unique serialized identifiers. This sample will come into the laboratory. We'll track it through in the Laboratory Information Management System, or LIMS. We'll be able to find out very, very quickly which scientist did the testing, which machine it was tested on, which protocol was used to test it, which reference test, and also I get a link to the actual final report itself. So we think that this is very important. So not only can we do in the future scenario, hopefully in a couple of months, a recall of a physical product, we can also link it with the scientific reporting that said that food was safe, that batch was safe, or that batch was approved as organic or non-pesticide or whatever. So we can do that, what I call the verification of the assurance layer. The assurance layer. How can we provide that assurance through the system? And nobody is doing that today. So this is leading edge stuff. And by the way, when we're finished with this stuff, because GS1 is a not-for-profit, and the whole program that we're doing here, it's all open source. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to make all of this available to everybody. Now I think that's good news for a lot of companies out there. A best practice on how to implement GS1 standards into the labs, and how to capture that final scientific report and associate it with a batch. That's going to be very, very important for companies, I think, to be able to figure out.
Wow. Yeah, that is awesome technology. And it's really cool to be able to implement that stuff into the blockchain. So I'm curious, since you've had a long experience working with supply chains, and also you've been talking about blockchain and supply chains, what do you think about the future of blockchain and supply chains?
Well, they're coming together for sure. And I think the key thing that Thomas and Giga pointed out earlier is one of the biggest problems we have in supply chains is the data. We have bad data everywhere. So one of the key things that the OriginTrail guys do is when you're coming up and you're starting the project, the first part of that project, the front end, it's about data governance. And it's about looking at standardizing the front end. So you end up actually cleaning the data on the front end. So there's no such thing as garbage in, garbage out in this case, because it's actually cleaned up front. And when you go through that process, it's a little bit laborious and a little bit tedious, but then you see that the partners are sharing accurate data with each other on a timely basis. So I think that cleaning the data, the interoperability component, and then the transparency of that. So the transparency of the supply chain, and by the way, this is my doctoral research area as well on transparency in supply chains. So I could speak for hours on that component as well. But we know that transparency is an enabler of trust. So essentially what we're doing, the OriginTrail protocol is an enabler of transparency, which is also then an enabler of trust in the supply chains. Globally, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer, we're in a globally they say trust is in crisis. So that's part of the issue. So again, just popping back to the laboratory example of what we're doing, we're going to try to help create, I'm going to say this in 2 ways, a best practice and a sort of a Chinese firewall. A best practice in that a marketing person that wants to announce that their product is organic, we want them in the future to be able to do that based on the scientific report. So in other words, if they don't have a scientific report that says that product is certified as organic, then they probably shouldn't be making that claim that it's organic. They need to have that evidence or that proof. The same with allergen testing. We have so many recalls right now for allergens. That's nuts. And nuts, of course, is one of the allergens. But upon aside, right, we have to get this right. We cannot be doing recalls all the time for allergens and products. A laboratory should have tested that. And before they launch those products, they need to have that evidence, that scientific evidence from a laboratory that it's done. Now, the second part of that, so that's the assurance component that will help marketeers with their branding and making their claims. We call them credence claims. Credence means that it's something that a consumer cannot verify before, during, or after they purchase. They leave it up to the signals that are on the product to interpret. So USDA Organic sends a strong signal. They can trust that it's the government and so on and so forth. So let's put that aside for a moment on what we're trying to help best practices with marketing. And over here, I think if we create that firewall in between the brand owner and the lab as well. So as I mentioned earlier, with the GS1 standards and cell phones coming together, if I'm a consumer and I scan the product here, let's say I scan Barry the Bear for the example, right? I scan Barry the Bear, and the master data, unknown to the consumer, what happens in the app goes off to the brand owner and pulls back in the master data. But unknown to the consumer, it should go off to the laboratory and pull in the lab report as well. In some cases, I know in Asia, brand owners will manipulate the scientific reports. So if we build in that extra level of I'm going to call it transparency and trust using the OriginTrail protocol, I think we can drive in more integrity into the supply chain. Now, that doesn't imply that all brand owners are bad or doing devious things, but I think they would probably agree that this extra level of integrity is probably a good thing, because for them as well, they can do a rapid search and find out who did the test, where was it done, which machine, which protocol, and so on and so forth. So I think we're heading in the right direction, and these are the major things that are wrong in the supply chain. We've got to fix the data, we've got to improve the interoperability, and we've got to improve the overall integrity. The OriginTrail protocol, increase transparency, and which in turn will increase trust. So we're going in the right direction. I'm very confident about that. So I think I'll be back to Slovenia probably again soon to follow up on some of the projects, and maybe there'll be more projects than Barry the Bear. We'll have more, I think. And interestingly, a little tidbit here: the laboratory in Vietnam, Hoang Vu, already certifies about 90% of honey, and 90% of the Vietnamese honey for export into the US and the EU. And I think there's only about 3 laboratories operating at that level. So now we have a laboratory that operates at a very high level, and we're going to add an extra level of integrity on that. We're going to have a best practice for sure.
Ah, interesting. That's interesting you brought up honey, because I saw something that there's a lot of honey fraud going on where they take actual honey and then just mix it with sugar syrup, and then they still call that honey.
That's right. You see the Netflix program Rotten from earlier this year, and that's exactly one of the examples. So we actually have in the laboratory in Ho Chi Minh, we have more technology to figure out that than they do in the country of Singapore. So actually the CEO of the lab is one of the designers and inventors of some of the mass spectrometry technology that's used for food. He was 30 years in the US, also at Stanford, and now he's back in Vietnam, giving back to his country of birth. So we have a very, very unique situation where we have one of the technology gurus in the authentication and provenance of products. So what he actually does is he's got these 2 isotope mass spectrometers connected together, and he as a scientist is thinking like a criminal, because the guys that are perpetrating the honey fraud are also scientists, unfortunately. They're also experts in the industry and scientists, and he's thinking like a criminal. What would they have done? How could they manipulate the current reference testing for those products? So it's beautiful when you see it in action. And when we I brought in one client, he brought in one client, I attended and did a briefing, and this was from the US. And he said, look, I see Hoang Vu stickers and labels and seal on honey for the last couple of years in the US. I had to come and see it for myself. So he came and he saw the processor, he saw the samples coming in, he saw how it's processed, As soon as he saw the processing, the equipment, and the output, he said, I'm in, signed up. That brought us from 80% to 90% of all the Vietnamese honey. So for people in the US and Europe that are eating Vietnamese honey, pretty much guaranteed that it's genuine, 100%.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that's pretty much it for all of my questions here. Anything else that you wanted to touch on?
I think we're on the right track here. These guys are great to work with. We have a lot of work to do. They're very pragmatic. The team is a small team, so they have to be judicious on how they work with clients. There's a lot of small companies coming in. There's a lot of startups coming in. We have to try to structure that a little bit better. So now we're going to set up within the Trace Alliance program some tier 1 partners, and we're working on that right now. So the tier 1 partners will take up the global systems integration or regional systems integration, and will take some pressure off the system. So we're addressing that, how we can have repeatable materials online, so videos that companies can download, but we can't handle all of the requests. This is why we need to have that community built. We need to have the Trace Alliance program functioning. We welcome all of the solution providers that are out there that may seem on paper to be competing, but to come in and have a look at the protocol, look at how you can possibly use that. Governments are welcome to come in here as well. Again, it's an open source protocol, independent and neutral of all the technologies out there. It really is a beautiful thing. And it builds beautifully on top of the GS1 standards, which are also independent and neutral. And as we all know, GS1 standards is the language of business.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, it sounds like you guys are really set up to take things on in the future. And I want to thank you very much for sitting down with this interview today. It was absolutely awesome to talk to you. And then we'll be looking to hear from you in the future. All right?
Nice chatting to you. All the best. And
right.
To all the tracers out there, trace on.
Right on. Peace.